big, great marketing doesn't need a big budget. But by doing that, we had backed ourselves into this corner, and out there was this massive world of an audience for us, and we weren't speaking to them. No, this is a growth driver. If you want to drive your organic growth, this is how you do it.
Welcome to Your CMO Mentor, the podcast from the Marketing Meetup where the brightest minds in marketing share the lessons they'd pass on if you came to them for advice. Today we have Ellie Hughes, who is the VP of Marketing over at Freeletics, the Europe's #1 fitness app. In this episode, Ellie joins us to speak about branding and positioning, which was a fantastic episode. But I'm curious what you took away from it, James Sandbrook.
Well, much like a lot of our guests, the way she turned up was incredible. Like we've recorded quite a few of these now, and Ellie's energy was on point. And you know when you sort of feel like enthusiasm is a big part of the job for marketing. Like you can see why she's so successful, because she's so enthusiastic about the topic, about the brand, and about the work that she does. And was very generous with her answers. I thought she was a really great guest. How about you? What stood out for you?
I think it was really interesting to bring in the topic of branding and positioning into this episode, because Ellie operates in such an environment where it's actually, without meaning to diminish the value of what Freeletics bring to the market, there are plenty of fitness apps out there. And there was a moment about halfway through the episode where Ellie started speaking about like the number, and I think she put an actual number next to the amount of fitness apps. And I was like, oh my God, imagine operating in such a saturated space where your product and your brand and your positioning are going to be the things which make you stand out. And so as an example of like a pure marketing exercise, with the exception, of course, of a great product, it was just fascinating to hear Ellie's insights from that perspective. So I think what was striking about the conversation as part of that as well was the fact that she came in and she was happy to speak tactical as much as she was happy to speak sort of strategy. So there's some real nuggets of just real great insight there. So I think it'll be an episode folks really enjoy for that reason.
Absolutely. And there is what I loved as well is the honesty around the brand effectively flatlining a little bit for a while, and what she did in order to turn that around. And I think it's a great lesson in position and brand building. So I think everyone is going to really enjoy
it. Bang on.
Is it at this point that we do the sponsor read? Klaxon.
Of course. Census-Wide is a company that delivers market research for the purposes of PR and marketing campaigns, which enables marketers to make decisions and do them well. But the reason why they're getting in touch with us right now and on this podcast is that they're releasing a brand new report called the CMO report. And so it's perfect for this theme of Your CMO Mentor, because I think first off, we're going to be speaking to CMOs. But secondly, we're going to be hearing a bunch of reflections from CMOs about how to do marketing well. And the lovely thing about the report is that Census-Wide have gone out to bunches and bunches of CMOs and said, what's your world like right now? What are you thinking about? What are your challenges? And how can we get continued success? And so Census-Wide have done the hard work. They've produced this report, having completed a bunch of interviews with CMOs everywhere. And now they're giving this out to CMOs around the world so that they know how they can act and respond in the market environment we operate, which is pretty cool.
Is it completely free, Joe?
It
better be. It better be free.
It's completely free, my friend.
Wow.
So I'd really recommend checking them out. Like, it's a great report, but also very lovely people behind it, with Megan in particular.
That's awesome. Are we going to put the link in the show notes description? Something like that.
This is a podcast, my friend. So we should probably do that thing.
We'll do that. Have a look. Tap on your phone, unless you're driving, and have a look at that link, and then download it and have a little read. Absolutely. Make your brain a bit bigger.
We always start these episodes of Your CMO Mentor with a few quick fire questions, and these are just the opportunity in a short amount of time to get to know you a little bit better, more than anything. So this is about your character, not necessarily looking for a right answer, just your answer. So the first question that we love to ask folks is, if you're starting out in marketing today, what skills would you be looking to cultivate first?
I mean, yeah, it's been a long time since I started, so things have changed a lot since then. And I see a few people coming in, new people, fresh out of school, first job, and there's a big difference, definitely. And I think the thing that I'm impressed most by at the moment in those people is their curiosity and their openness to learning. And not just they're open to learning, but literally they will go away on a Friday and they'll come back on a Monday and they'll say, hey, by the way, I've learned everything there is to know about this topic. And that just blows me away. Like, literally being able to just learn new skills and therefore also adapt to this ever-changing world and industry we're working in, just by being curious. I mean, the tools and the trends and cookies, everything will change, but that curiosity, and especially curiosity about people and trying to understand people, never does. So that's one thing for sure. This curiosity, I think, is just absolutely priceless. And the thing that I'm personally still kicking myself about is I would love to have gone into this career with more knowledge about psychology. So understanding consumer psychology, understanding people and their behavior just a little bit better. Because at the end of the day, even though marketing has changed so much just in the last 20 years, at the end of the day, at its core, it still is and always will be about why people do what they do. If you can understand that, if you can crack that code, then you can, get them to do what you want them to do to a certain degree. So yeah, the psychology part of it, I think, is hugely important, and I would really dig down into that skill for sure right at the beginning. I think it's so valuable. And then I think it's a bit of a trifecta. I think the third thing really is, I feel like most people who go into marketing inherently are into storytelling and are creative people. I feel like it draws that type of person anyway. But I think having data literacy as a skill is fantastic. Like, I feel like if you nail that early on, that is just going to help you do better work and better sell your work internally, externally, in the long run. So for me, that's like the trifecta, that I think would just be such a huge boost to the start of someone's career, for sure.
I think I think you're right in the curiosity thing is a real standout kind of behavior, isn't it? Of like, we see it at the people that come to our events. You've obviously been doing this a little while. Got a team. Are there certain traits of marketers that you've seen and that you've worked with who have had a little bit of experience, who do things differently that maybe wouldn't be traits of a junior or first time marketer, whether that's a trait, behavior, or whatever?
I mean, what I have seen more and more now is people come to the table with an idea, and it's not just an idea, but it's almost like already a business case, and they've thought ahead to, I mean, when I think back to when I was starting out, like incredibly 15 years ago, we would come up with an idea and say, hey, this would be really cool, and that would kind of be the level that we were pitching. And I had someone in my team, Gen Z, still very young, had an idea and said to me, I would like to pitch this to you and the rest of the executive team.
Wow.
And he stood up, went into this meeting with the six of us, and pitched this idea. And he had projected revenue, he had a whole business case, how long this would take, what the dependencies were. And I was so impressed, because it took me a few years to really understand how to pitch something and how to create a business case and how to sell my ideas to people. And to have someone, in their early mid-20s come in and be able to do that off the bat without being asked to do it, just pure initiative, going around different departments in the team, getting that information together, that really, really impressed me. And of course, didn't just impress me, but impressed the CEO and everyone else in that room. That I think is something that's coming up, is that people are seeing the bigger picture and understanding my small idea can actually have an immediate tangible impact on the entire company, and my idea needs to get to the top level of people who need to make these decisions. So that was very nice to see, and I think it's a trend. More and more people understand the impact that they can have.
Love that very much. That's really, really wicked.
Very cool.
Yeah. Let's head into quickfire number 3. I mean, we're doing terrible interview etiquette because that was such a fascinating answer.
But we'll ignore your answer.
Yeah,
go on
that's fine.
The rest of the conversation does not work this way. Just while we're in quickfire. So, question number 3: who would be your dream mentor and why?
I mean, I kind of spent my whole career wishing I had a mentor. I never did, which was such a sad story. But the funny thing is, if you would have asked me a year ago, Mike Cesario from Liquid Death.
Okay, yeah.
Fantastic, because I just love how they've made such a marketing machine out of water. It's water in a can.
Yeah.
And the way they market it, it just fascinates me, and I love it. And I would do so many things just to sit in a room and just chat. I would love that. And then at the beginning of this year, I actually had the opportunity to listen to him give a talk about how they work, what they do. And what stunned me and also was quite flattering was that he works and thinks the exact same way that I do.
Right.
And that's such a weird thing to experience when you idolize this person. You think, oh, I wish I could understand how they do it. And then you're like, wow, they literally do exactly the same. Same size teams, in-house everything, small budgets, don't spend money on this and this and this. And I was like, oh my God, I can relate 1,000%. We have the same brain. So still would love to just have him as a sparring partner. Incredible. But I'm also very impressed with, I have to say Ryan Reynolds is also very interesting, because I feel like everything he touches is just marketing gold, no matter what it is. Big things, small things. I feel like he could do anything with anything. So those 2 people that I really would love to get into a room with.
Love that so much. And like, I think what's really nice about your answer there, just quickly reflecting, is that like when you had that experience with Mike, and I think even the very premise of this podcast is one where we're almost putting folks on a bit of a pedestal, and sort of saying, this person is different or knows more than you and therefore is worth listening to. And actually, for you to have that experience of someone you admire and kind of go, oh wait, you're very, very human, but you're also sharing a similar thought process to me, I think is actually a really lovely thing for us to carry through when we think about this podcast, that like, A, not putting people on pedestals necessarily, but also B, that this is available to us and these experiences and these thoughts, which is just a lovely reflection. So thank you for speaking to that as well.
Sure.
I think it goes back to the comment that you made before that we completely ignored, about somebody young in the team doing the things that you at the top of the team would have probably done. And so it's available to us all, right?
Yeah, it is.
I
think
the
beauty of it.
Limitations quite often in our head as to what we can achieve, which is cool. And that kind of ties in quite nicely to our 4th question, which is, if you were to give yourself one piece of advice from you starting really early back in your career, and you were to say, hey, 15-year-old younger Ellie, what would that one bit of advice be to yourself?
On a personal note, I think the advice would be, don't set so many limits to yourself in your career, because I started off in one area of marketing and I thought, okay, that's my life. That's the next, 50 years. I'm going to be doing PR. I will be the PR person until I die, kind of thing. And I never set myself such ambitious goals, because I just didn't realize it was open to me. I didn't realize I had this opportunity. Never, ever, even if you'd asked me 4 years ago if I would have an executive role and I would be leading this for this company and doing all these things, never would I have believed that was possible. So on a personal note, I would say, don't set those limits and don't believe that you're stuck in one area or one thing for the rest of your career. And on a more professional note would be big, great marketing doesn't need a big budget.
Nice. Love that.
You can do so much with so little. I mean, honestly, the first few years, going to a startup is so different. I've worked for, PlayStation, Rockstar Games, Getty Images, brands with a lot of money. And then going to a startup where there was no money, that kind of hacking marketing is incredible. Like, it was so much fun, and it just made you realize that you can do great things with literally no budget. Just a lot of dedication and motivated people and a vision is all you really need. So I think for myself and anyone else at the start of their career, like, don't be blinded by that idea that you have to spend whatever it is Nike spends, like $144 a second or something like that on marketing. You don't have to do that. You can achieve really great marketing with a really, really, really small budget.
That's really good. That's going to be such a reassuring message to people. It is like there are so many people in our community that are given stupidly small budgets, and they've, to hear somebody running a really, successful marketing team, it's good to hear that,
The requests we get, I'm really flattered by, because it shows that people think we spend a huge amount every year on marketing. And I'm like, wow, if you knew, that's way more than my yearly budget on everything. But, obviously I don't tell them that. But I always take that as a big compliment, because if people think you're spending that on your marketing and you're spending maybe 10% or whatever, then you're doing something really good. You're definitely doing things right.
Love that so much, Ellie. I feel like I could listen to you speak all day. I think you're amazing. Like, honestly, thank you so much for speaking to everything
thanks.
you have already so far. 10 minutes of conversation, I think, will have provided boundless comfort for a lot of folks, as well as inspiration. Seriously, I'm not even trying to blow smoke. I think it's really, really quite wonderful. So thank you for showing up as you have. Not at all. So that was the quick fire. The second part of the interview, in Your CMO Mentor, we take the opportunity to sort of deep dive into a specific area of your knowledge. So, I'm almost regretful, because it feels like you've got such richness in your career and your answers already. But today we've chosen to focus on marrying data and emotions in campaigns, and so repositioning. And you've already referenced this in your first set of answers, so it feels like it's something you can quite naturally speak to. But before we get to that point about marrying data and emotions in campaigns, I think it's worth asking you, just for 120 seconds or so, not precisely, just on what you actually find yourself doing day to day, because then it'll ground that in context for anyone listening in.
I think that might be the hardest question today, probably. Just because it feels like every week is different. My job is such a weird mix of strategic and operational, and then suddenly I find myself building a landing page, and then suddenly I'm building the budget for the next year, and it's a bit of everything, and every week is a little bit different. But I would say a lot of my time is focused on people. So obviously a big part of my job is managing people, being with the people in my team, guiding them strategically, helping them make decisions, but also just trying to empower them to be brave, to take risks, to try new things. And of course, managing my direct reports and making sure everything is going well and everyone's happy and healthy and fulfilled. And then, of course, there's a lot of solving problems, because problems will always come up, making decisions. I also spend a lot of my time aligning with our VP of product. So for the first time ever, the collaboration between product and marketing is just chef's kiss at this company, which makes a really big difference. So there's a lot of alignment there as well, making sure that we know what we're doing and that we're functioning like one head. And of course, then there's a lot of strategy and executive tasks, thinking what direction should we be taking, what KPI should we be focusing on? Do we need to make a change in something? How is the performance going? Do I need to adapt the budget? What's the budget going to look like for next year? Board reporting, presenting to the board what's going well, how fantastic we're doing at the moment, and what great things we've done. But also really nitty gritty things like optimizing different levers. How can we boost monetization of our organic traffic? How can we increase the traffic? Are there things we haven't looked at? Are there new channels we should explore? And then on the operational side, I also manage our brand partnerships and also our B2B efforts. So there's a very weird, unusual mix of stuff that's high level and very, very, very operational. And each day looks a little bit different.
So this is how you're doing so much on so little, because you're doing everything by the sounds of things.
Yes, literally, yes. Yeah.
That is amazing. I was interested to, Joe and I were talking before about the sort of repositioning of the company of Freeletics, and there are presumably some signals that you got, and to sort of tell you that it was time to do that repositioning. How did you spot them? Because it sounds like you are going at 1,000,000 miles an hour. You've got loads of different reports and campaigns and landing pages. How are you giving yourself the mental space to go, actually, this is a real top level problem that we've got to solve? And so what were those signals, and how would you sort of advise others could kind of like look for signals and for when it's time for a change?
Yeah. I think the good news is there are signals, and unless you really bury your head in the sand, I think they're quite easy to pick up on. So it can also be a bit of a slow burn, so it can creep up on you a little bit, but the signals will be there. I think the signals are there on the brand side and, of course, on the revenue side. And I think revenue issues tend to pop up earlier. But if we focus on the marketing and the brand aspect of things, I would say that the key indicators would be things like looking at your brand engagement and seeing that maybe there's a slump there. So you're seeing less engagement, less reach even, or if you're noticing, okay, we keep reaching the same people, but we're not really extending our pool. And you're realizing, okay, we're not really growing in terms of brand and awareness and reach because we're just reaching the same people all the time, and then it starts to stagnate. And then if you hit a plateau, then you start noticing it. If your numbers are always the same, especially, that engagement starts to go down, that's a big warning sign. So for us at Freeletics, there were two pivotal brand moments where we decided to reposition ourselves. The first one was pre-COVID, and the second one was post-COVID. But they both kind of stem from the same need, where the first time the market was really starting to kick off. So we were one of the first fitness apps, actually, but that didn't last very long. So you've got a market that's becoming more and more saturated. And we had backed ourselves into a niche, in my opinion, because we were differentiating ourselves as a brand, because we were the hardcore brand. We were the brand that people were like differentiating themselves by associating themselves with. So saying, oh, I use Freeletics, which means I'm really hardcore and I'm really tough, a little bit like CrossFit now. But by doing that, we had backed ourselves into this corner, and out there was this massive world of an audience for us, and we weren't speaking to them. And we realized, if we stay here, we're going to die, because this niche is only so big. We can't sustain our growth with this niche. So we realized there was a huge need to resonate with a bigger audience, and also the product was anyway developing in this direction. And I think there as well, one of the flags is look at your product and where your product is going. Is it going in the same direction as your storytelling? And if it's not, then there's a huge disconnect and you need to reset. And this was what it was more in 2023 when we did a brand refresh, where again, we realized, okay, we still need to be a little bit more accessible. The hurdle to join needs to be a little bit lower. People are still intimidated by us as a brand and a product. But we especially realized, okay, we need to resonate with a younger audience, because in our case, the data was showing us that the new users coming in are the same age as our current audience. And if you see your current audience as a fitness app is, 32, 33, 35, whatever, something around that, that's already not concerning, but you do think, okay, good. Well, we have a solid base in that age range, but in order to keep going the next 10, 15 years, we need to make sure we have those younger people coming in who will age with us. And when you don't see that happening, that's also a really big warning sign. You have to do something to resonate with those people as well. And of course, there's that initial resistance internally. But what about our current audience? I personally think it's much easier to retain a current audience with a product that they use, that they like. If that's not changing fundamentally, you can still retain that audience and keep them happy. But the whole point is to get new people in the funnel. And if you're not, that funnel will eventually dry up. And then what are you going to do? No one's going to come in to use your product. So that was the biggest warning sign for us in 2023. And basically, we just needed to make sure that our new brand aligned with who we wanted to talk to, which meant looking at the data. What does Gen Z want? Do they want purpose, authenticity? Do they want to work out differently? And there is where that point comes back. Our product was developing in the way that a post-COVID world needed it to develop. More flexibility, hybrid training, all of these options, just giving people all of these options that they wanted. And the brand didn't reflect that at all. The brand was still really focused on one element. So we realized that the story we were telling didn't match the experience users were having, and the product was just evolving off on its own. So those were the signals for us. And luckily, internally, everyone was quite open to this need that we had. Everyone understood why we needed to do it, and it was quite easy to rectify.
Well, I find that really, really interesting, because I guess there's a moment where you notice that in the data, but then there's also a second moment where you have to explain this to someone and sort of get them on board that that's what's actually happening. And I think there'll be a lot of folks listening in who sort of can recognize that the situation of noticing a data point or something similar, but then can also resonate with an experience of taking that data point to a manager or a senior manager or the CEO or whatever, and they go, "Oh yeah, that's because of X, Y, Z. I won't worry about that.
We need more ads."
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We need to be doing the same. So I love that you said that there was an internal open-mindedness to this, because that sounds like it was the better of the scenarios that could have existed. But how did you go about sort of taking those data points and sort of explaining that situation to the rest of the team? Because if we're focusing in on marrying data and emotions, the natural place to go to is sort of externally, but actually there's a big play here on the internal stuff before you even get to the external stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't always that way internally. So there was a long-standing fight between brand, what people would call, or branding, like that nice to have stuff, and the performance. It took many, many years until we had that nice marrying of the two. It was definitely a fight between the two before that. So I think marketing is made up of two things. It's made up of numbers and it's made up of stories. And of course, there's the decision, which one do you lead with? Do you ignore one? Like, some people go the extreme as well. I think they have to work together. And I would say data tells you what's happening, but emotion explains why that matters. And emotion makes people do things. Data doesn't necessarily. So for me, it's always been important to use data to inform your hypotheses, but it never dictates our creative decisions and our creative freedom, because I always say you have to take data with a pinch of salt when it comes to marketing. And it also depends heavily on what you want to achieve. So you can definitely frame the problem and identify the problem using the data. But at the end of the day, you need something emotional to move the people. Because if there's a problem, it means you need people to be emotionally moved to solve that problem. And you're not going to do that with data. You're going to do that with creativeness, with storytelling, with something people actually care about. And it's not by putting numbers on a billboard. It's by telling stories and meeting people where they are. So I mean, we do this a lot, as well as we do this combination of, if we have concepts for campaigns, for example, we will run A/B tests. We will run, so for example, we'll create some mock-ups for meta campaigns, the two different ideas we have, and we'll run an A/B test and see, okay, which ones perform, what are the early indications. Or we will run them on usertesting.com, and we will collect the data and collect the feedback, and then we will have definitive feedback that tells us variant A works better than variant B, or users were completely confused by both, or whatever it is, right? But it gives you something to work with. But it would never 100% make the decision, because at the end of the day, the decision still lies with the people who have to create and run with it and execute it. So it's a bit of both, but I would say you lead with the data, but you definitely execute and finish with the creative storytelling side of things.
Love that. Thank you.
Have you ever had a situation where you've got data telling you one thing, but then you're talking to a set of customers and they're telling you emotionally completely the opposite? And if so, how have you managed that? Or did it come back to that A/B testing?
Actually, yes, there was a situation where we kind of disregarded the feedback and the early data that we had. So it was so for us, January is always the month, the big month. We have a January campaign every year, and that's really important to us. It's the most competitive month. We have to stand out. And the one brief we had for January 2024 was be provocative. I don't need to be told twice. So I said, hold my beer, I will deliver you something. And what we had was a concept, which was, it was a fitness app ad, but it was in the context of dating.
Right.
So we were talking about the app as if it was your next date. And we called it not just a fling, because we were saying, if it's not hurting, it's just flirting, you need an app and a fitness trainer that actually understands you and pushes you and stuff like this. So it was a lot of very nice double entendres in there. Not all were approved. But yeah, we had these fantastic images, really spicy images mixed with really clever copy, but it all came down to the product and talking about fitness. And we ran this and user testing, and we also ran some creatives on Meta. And so we had, first of all, we had no data to support that anyone would really understand the context of dating. And we had no data to say it won't alienate people. It won't have people who already use us being put off, and it wouldn't necessarily put off people that might choose to use this in the future. So we had no guidance on that. And then when we ran the test, they weren't really conclusive because people didn't really understand it, which is also a very, very good piece of feedback to have. It was very inconclusive. People who ran the test said to us, they don't get it. It doesn't make sense. And we looked at it and we said, we really believe in this. We really, really, really think it will work. The data is not negative enough that we're put off. Like, it's not a huge red stop sign. So we said, you know what, let's just do it. Let's run with it anyway. And I mean, this was our first ever out of home campaign. Like, can you imagine the first thing you do is put on these massive posters of these scantily clad people that say something like, last longer than your last date, or something like this. And it was a risk. Of course it was a risk. And, I was like, oh my God, what's the CEO going to say if this doesn't work? And it worked really, really well. The lesson was that the emotional reaction people had meant that they actually remembered it. They remembered the ad, and we saw it in the data afterwards that was provided to us. The recollection and consideration were actually really, really strong. And we even saw the uptake in that market in January, in the most competitive month of the year.
Wow.
We saw that the performance had gone up. The revenue was up. We really saw that there was an impact. So in that case, it just goes to prove that sometimes you need to, like I said, there's a grain of salt. You have to balance out this idea of the performance ROI and the guaranteed ROAS and all of that. You have to balance that with the emotional and the brand equity that you could build by doing something. So in a nutshell, I would say don't let data make all the decisions. Sometimes you've just got to run with your gut, because at the end of the day, we're all human and we all react to something that means something to us. So it's a bit of a trade-off.
Love that. Ellie, you're wicked. I love you.
I will take that, thank you. I put that on my website.
Yeah, just you're wicked. That's the quote. Thank you for speaking to that. Like, and I think it's what's interesting in the answer as well. There is when we think about mentorship, and even some of the framing of our questions will often gravitate to mentorship being in an early stage career thing, an early stage career moment. Actually, in the context of this, it's a great leadership moment for someone who's in senior management as much as they are at the beginning of their career. So I'm very, very keen for this podcast to be sort of felt in that way, because I think it's a really big deal. So I appreciate you speaking through a really present example. I mean, the interesting thing with that campaign in particular, and double entendres, and other things like idioms and all those sort of things, is that they can be quite often culturally relevant and local. But you're running campaigns across multiple markets with a huge user base. So do you, if you are sort of in a mentorship capacity for someone who's having to market internationally, how would you start to advise them on sort of creating something that's both consistent globally but sort of resonant locally? Because I guess this campaign may or may not have translated across borders. I don't know.
Not at all. It's almost a sad thing because our company language is English. I mean, we're based in Germany, and most of our users are based in Germany. But we create everything from the marketing side in English first, because that's just our language in the company. And it's so sad when you have such a fantastic concept and you think, oh, this is just pure gold. We've really nailed this. This is fantastic. And then the localization team come along and they say, this will not work anywhere apart from English language countries. So, and this one didn't either. We had to actually hire a German copywriter to just what we call transcreate. So basically just understand the idea and then rewrite it for the market. And I think if you know that, if you go into the game knowing, hey, it's not one size fits all, then I think that's fine to have that expectation that, okay, I have to adapt to different markets. What I would say is, like, the golden rule for me is your brand narrative, your brand message, your North Star should always be your global truth. So for us, for example, for Freeletics, it would be no excuses, fitness for life, that kind of messaging. This needs to be the case everywhere in every country. Whether you decide to localize it or not, that message needs to arrive everywhere in exactly the same way. Now, as I mentioned, when we create, especially when it comes to campaigns, when we create concepts like this, our localization team, we're lucky enough to have in-house, is involved actually from the beginning of conception, because they need to confirm, or in our case, sometimes not confirm, that we could translate the concept into something that's culturally relevant and that will culturally land in different markets. So, for example, they'll say, this is impossible to translate into French. You'd have to come up with, either you'd have to use a different concept or you'd have to use a different concept in France and somehow adapt it. And I think that's really, really important, that before you get too deep into the rabbit hole of, oh my God, we have a fantastic idea, you need to have that sense check of, are we going to do ourselves a favor by following this on an international level? And I think what really helps us is that we have a global spine, I would say, and then a local voice. So the main pillar of everything we do is global, and we think on a global level, but the voice with which we speak to a customer is much more local. And we make sure that we are aware of the culture, of the requirements, of the mindset of a certain country, and we try and adapt our language with them to that as well. And just make sure that you have the insights, not just like, hey, here's a picture and I translated the copy on it. Like, make sure that you have the insights for the markets, and just maybe let the markets guide you a little bit more, and just don't translate, but maybe, like I said, transcreate some of your content for markets. And I think the effort is definitely worth it, because I think you have such a better performance and such a better result for it.
It'd be really interesting, actually, because we use the line "positively lovely," which isn't a line that just people use on a daily basis.
Yes.
And it is about kindness and generosity. And I think globally people can understand that concepts. But we've got events in Japan, we've got them in South America. It'd be like, I wonder whether "positively lovely" if it's up on the screen, people are just kind of frowning at, going, "What does that mean?" You should probably check that out, Joe.
We should probably check that out.
Yeah. I know some people.
Sounds like we need your team helping us. We've got some. You talked a lot about your campaigns, like the humor side, the emotional side is obviously an important thing to land a message. How do you ensure your campaigns reflect sort of real human stories, rather than sort of slipping into like polished ad speak, so to speak? Like, have you ever been sort of accidentally railroaded into thinking that there's a bit of corporate language in there, and you've moved away from the story? If you were to kind of mentor somebody into staying true to the brand, how do you go about checking yourself on that?
Yeah, I mean, my first thought on that would be talking about like polish ad speak. We've got enough Nikes, Adidas, Apples out there. We don't need more of that. And I think at the latest, I think Gen Z have also reached that point where they're like, you know what, sometimes it's cool to see a really inspirational Nike ad. Like, that's a nice moment, but I don't need every ad and every brand touch point I have to be that. So from our side, it's like, you know what, let's just let Nike and Adidas do that, because we don't have the money to compete with that, and we don't need to compete with that, because there are so many brands out there. I mean, there are 97,000 fitness apps out there. Like, that's a really red ocean. That's a very red ocean. And then, so can we even differentiate ourselves by just being really polished? No, I don't think so. And honestly, I think it would be a waste of money, because we have almost 60 million users. And like you said, I don't think there's many things out there that are more personal and more emotional than a fitness journey or a fitness experience. And, I say this a lot when people talk about subscriptions, and they're like, yeah, well, Netflix does this and Headspace does this. I say, yeah, fitness is hard. You're not just consuming an app. Oh yeah, I'm going to stream Emily in Paris. No, I have to get up, find space somewhere, and I have to literally force myself to suffer. It's really, really hard. And I think marketing for fitness is really hard, because people underestimate we're trying to force people to just do horrible things to themselves. And
I never thought of it like that, but that is a really hard job.
It really is. If I did marketing for like anything that's just consumable, it'd be super easy. I think it would be a dream. But and that's the thing. That's the beauty of it, though, as well, is because once you get through that first horrible, and I'm speaking from experience, that awful first touch point, it becomes a really fantastic pool of emotional storytelling. And we realized very quickly, like, we have our customers, like I said, 60 million users now. Each one has a story, but it's a very relatable story to all the others. And we realized this is actually our edge, our competitive edge, because, back in 2012, when we started out, there was no money. There wasn't even a team. Like, literally, there was maybe 3 people. And what they did was they said, okay, look, we do the workouts in like parks, public parks outside, and people come up and they're like, oh, what are you doing? This looks crazy. Can I try? And they said, yeah, here's the puke bucket. Trust us, you'll need it. And they started filming this. And then they said, you know what? Why don't you do this for 12 weeks? We'll train you. We'll film everything. We'll document your before and after transformation, and we can use it for YouTube. Is that fine? And they were like, yeah, sure. Okay, whatever. That was getting us like 5-10 million new users a year. That was what got this, like, the snowball, the effects going. And that was what sparked this idea that, okay, our customers and their stories are our biggest asset. And so 100%, instead of talking like polished ad speak, we talk real user stories. So we share testimonials, we share these amazing transformation stories, but also the struggles and, you know, the everyday experiences that people really understand and know because they've experienced it firsthand. We actively avoid perfection. What's the point? This was also part of the rebranding we did in 2023, where we said we're moving away a little bit from this like godlike perfection and putting all these people and especially these body ideals up on a pedestal. We wanted to move away from that and talk more about the vulnerability, but also the effort that goes into these things. You know, not everyone can get a six-pack, but also not everyone wants a six-pack. But it's a lot of effort to lose weight, and that deserves as much recognition as someone who maybe wasn't quite overweight before but got a six-pack. So just talking about the effort and maybe idolizing that a little bit more. And what I think is fantastic is just by pulling out relatable moments and feelings, you can really connect with people. You don't need productions, you don't need something fancy. It's literally just pulling out those moments. And for us, that's actually very easy because we work so closely, especially as a marketing team, with our community. Like, we're listening to them every day, we hear from them every day. And so we can pick people out who tell us their stories, or we even invite people in and we say, like we used to, come be part of the journey. Let us guide you. Let us train you for 15 weeks. Let us document it and use it to help other people feel motivated. And so those are the two options we have. And those are really, really effective for us. And the stories, just the visuals themselves are super, super powerful. But I think it's also important to choose your words well. So, for example, we use language of empowerment, of encouragement, more positive than we used to be. You know, we used to be like, oh, quitting is not an option. You're not worth anything if you quit. And that's just ridiculous because like now that just seems so out of touch. We don't ever judge people. You know, we want to talk to people at eye level, like if it was their real trainer at the gym. You know, if you come in and you say, hey, I feel like shit today and the world is ending and the last thing I really want to do today is do burpees. You can just say to them, you know what, go home, have a good night's sleep, and maybe come back stronger tomorrow. And that's totally fine. And that's what we want to reflect in our communication. So we aim to inspire people and lift them up rather than make them feel crap about themselves, because I think there are enough different places in the world and online that do that for them. So we don't need to add to that.
Totally. We share a similar outlook. You know, we've always had an approach where we've been like, you know, it's easy to find examples of stuff we want to shout down in the industry, but we choose to elevate the things that are good, and it's a greater experience for that in a lot of ways. With the podcast, the last thing that we like to do with folks as we draw towards the end of our time together is provide a scenario, and you've spoken so wonderfully on this bridging the gap between data and emotion and positioning and campaigns and the stories you told. Like as I say, I could stay here all day. But with this scenario, we try and provide something from the community in their real world and sort of process it through your brain. The idea is not necessarily to get your tactical opinion, just like hear the sort of steps that your brain goes through when solving the problem. So the scenario that's been provided by the community is such. I'm a marketing manager who's in the community. I've been asked to lead a repositioning project for my brand. My challenge is that the leadership team only wants to see hard numbers, so clicks, conversions, and ROI. But I believe the story we need to tell needs to be rooted in human emotion if it's going to stick. If I came to you for mentorship, how would you guide me to balance those two demands without losing credibility with my bosses?
It was a laugh for somebody who's been there at some point in her career.
Wow, I can't believe that would ever happen. No, I feel this because I've been there, done that. I've heard this argument many times. And it's funny that it's still such a presence in
Totally.
2025. The good news is I think there is, at least in my brain, seems like there's quite a simple way to navigate the situation. First off, I mean, you want to convince this group of people. So you have to, it's like marketing. You're going to market your idea to this group of people. How do you do that? You need to understand where they're at. You need to understand their language and their mindset. So you need to approach it from their perspective. It sounds to me like in this case, you really have to kind of build a business case for brand. That's, you know, that's what they're looking for. They want numbers, they want KPIs. So, you know, I would say, do your research to start with, pull lots of nice nuggets together, pull best practices, examples from the internet, studies, research, just pull all these nice bits of information that really cement the reasoning why you want to do this. You know, completely bombard them with data that they can't argue against. You know, you say, oh, we need to do this because we need to attract, you know, you say we need to grow into Gen Z and we can only do this by repositioning. And say, oh, the new brand needs to be more focused on sustainability. Research has shown that 64% of Gen Z are willing to pay a premium for products from a brand that supports sustainability, and 25% will stop buying from brands that don't show any interest in sustainability. Like, those are real hard numbers. Give that to them. So I would say translate your personal emotion, and you should be emotional about this. You should be passionate about this because this is a really great opportunity. Translate that energy into metrics, and even if it's maybe boring in the first instance, try and translate those into the metrics and KPIs that they will understand, and just show how the brand can drive performance. You know, it is not a far stretch. You know, we're talking about organic growth, which you can monetize. We're talking about retention, customer lifetime value, all of these things. These should be metrics that they understand, and they're directly linkable to brand performance and brand marketing. So that's not a stretch. And I think it's important that when you pitch these kinds of topics, and that goes for all of us, and I've been guilty of this in the past, and now I've learned from this experience, you really need to frame this like emotional aspect of brand marketing as a growth driver. It's always a growth driver. It's not like an add-on. It's not like, oh, it's a nice to have. No, this is a growth driver. If you want to drive your organic growth, this is how you do it. And just be really, really adamant about that. And if you need to, you know, use A/B testing, use a pilot, whatever it is, to prove that they can coexist together. You know, you can have your performance and you can have your branding. Use whatever assets you have internally to be able to run tests, whether it's, for example, running some test campaigns on Meta to pull some initial data, whether it's running internal user research, things like this. Use what you have to be able to build that business case. And also external business cases, you know, Nike, Dove, whatever it is. Pull the experience of others and show, hey, this is what could happen to us. And really don't forget that it's not, you have to like set expectations. It's not going to be an overnight success. Yeah. It's a slow burn, but once it does start burning, it can turn into a wildfire and you can really, really see the benefits. I think it's really important to highlight that. And I've had this argument countless times in the last 10 years, at least, in my current company. And I would say I'd say 9 out of 10 times, I end this argument and this conversation with one of my favorite metaphors that I never forgot, which was, it takes 7 touch points along, at least at the time, a nice linear line, with a brand before a consumer is ready to buy. So we need to put those touch points out there. If we don't do that, how are they going to have 7 touch points to be able to buy from us? And we need to understand where the audience is so that we can create those touch points. But then even if we do have the touch points, we have to make sure they're good. Because if they're not good, this person's never going to buy. And how do we do this? Well, we do this through brand marketing. And like I said, back in the day, this is quite an old saying, but it was a straight line, because back in the day it was a straight line. You started at A and you ended at Z. But now I think it's more of a jungle gym, because we've also seen from our data, customers come from the weirdest places and they take the strangest routes to get to actually buying. They might start on a PR article and then they hit an ad and then they go to the app store and then they do this and then they go there and then they go to social media and then they buy. It's a jungle gym, and you can only build and extend the universe of this jungle gym through brand marketing. And if you're not going to hit those touch points with people, you're not going to encourage them to buy. And you can run as many ads as you want, but the ads are not going to compensate for those 7 touch points. And you need something to bolster your ad efforts, and that's only going to be brand marketing.
Love that.
What an answer.
Nailed
Mic drop.
And then that's my mic drop, and then I leave the room. And then I say, but do what you want and see what happens.
Ellie, you've been amazing. Thank you so much for
incredible.
Thank you for having me. It's been very fun.